All right, so you wanted me to talk a little bit about the context and conceptualization of this project. We had a number of faculty teaching different courses who had been talking already about how they can bring service learning into the experience of their students in the curriculum in the classroom, and decided that together they were going to do some kind of a collaborative effort. And so I was brought into the conversation at this point, and together in the conversation, focus began to form around the general theme of food insecurity. Um, we talked about homelessness and other big issues as well. But then, as the conversation progressed, each faculty member, whether he or she teaches psychology or English or whatever it might be, were thinking about how they can bring their students into this project. And so this this particular project today is part of the effort of the psychology class that Professor Edens teaches. And this is part of a larger theme then as we go through the semester. Food insecurity, we're going to kind of touch on that general theme in different ways. And one of the ways we're going to bring it into the experience of Richland's community is through a drive where we'll invite people to bring food to campus and donate that. And then probably some of that will go to our food pantry here on campus. And then also a good part of it will go to some of our other community partners, our nonprofits that are part of this. And I think we're going to learn a little bit more about them in just a bit.
Right, thank you, John. So what we're going to discuss today is the marshmallow test and executive function. And so in psychology, psychology has had a very intimate connection with food. When we started investigating the basic principles of learning, that was all with food and water and basic resources used as motivators. And so here with the marshmallow test, we see another situation where there's a dilemma. Then the dilemma is, do you take the food now or do you wait and you get a little bit more food later? And so we're going to progress through a series of questions and we're going to discuss how that relates to executive function. And then we're going to kind of segue into the needs of our community partners. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the food drive and kind of discuss when that food drive might occur and negotiate some dates for that food drive at the very end of our presentation. So we do have some students here that are eager and interested to discuss this topic, and they really have become somewhat of experts on this topic of the marshmallow test and our psychological experiences with food and how food shapes our psychology. So I'm going to go ahead and ask some of those students to inform us what is the marshmallow test in a little bit more detail than I gave to our audience.
Well, first of all, good afternoon to all of our listeners. Um, I am Melanie. I'm Ikra.
I am Pace.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the marshmallow test is basically an experiment to see whether or not children have self-control over a marshmallow, and
And see if they would be able to wait and how much time would they be able to wait to receive another marshmallow or would they eat it rather immediately?
so it overall tests their patience and their trust as well. It can build dishonesty as well as honesty to some kids,
And also it can make us understand more about delayed gratification, and that will help when they wait, they're gonna see the rewards of it.
it could also help teachers understand why some of their behaviors during some of their school activities or why they act a certain way sometimes. So yeah. And like overall, as they get older, their behavior kind of changes along with them. It can get worse over time as well. And
All right, thank you all. So, can you all list and describe a few outcomes of the marshmallow test? So, what were these kids able to do, and what were some of them unable to do?
um, well, some of them got frustrated when they had to wait a longer period of time to get a marshmallow, as they were promised if they could wait longer, they would get another marshmallow. But comes into play with the delayed gratification and how mistrust can build along the way with it. And so, yeah.
To build up on what Ikra said, I recall that on our class we saw the video where they tested the kids, and they had a girl and a boy, and the girl, they said that they first tested her with crayons. They tell her that if she would wait, would if she would wait to receive a bigger set of crayons or use the ones that were presented first, and the the girl waited. Rather, with the boy, they said, would he use those, or would he rather wait for the bigger set? And he waited, but then they told him purposely that they didn't have a set, building not a trustful relationship.
So, the effect of this is that the boy grew frustrated. He and like as he will get older, many researchers have said that it builds mistrust and dishonesty along the way with it. While with the girl, it would be somewhat of the opposite of that. She would grow to trust more
And
people.
become more confident.
Yeah, be more confident in themselves and
do better on
yeah,
school.
and it like her patience will grow along the way, and then yeah.
Yeah, and they will like cultivate more self-control, instead of having a instant gratification, they will get a delayed gratification, and choosing to have something now might feel good, but the effort of waiting to see a bigger result makes it feel much better.
Wow, so that's all very interesting. So what you're saying is these kids develop trust with the people that are giving them the information
Yes.
by the people actually following through with what it was that they said that they would do, right? And so if the kid is sitting there and they say, "Okay, these crowns aren't that good. If you wait, I'll bring you back a full set of art supplies." And the kid decides to wait, and then the kid is learning whether or not they can trust that person. If that person does come back with the art supplies, right? Then they've learned trust, and so when the person sets one of their favorite treats in front of them, like a marshmallow, are you saying that they're more likely to wait for that treat or less likely to wait?
Less likely to wait.
Less likely to wait if they've developed that trust bond or if they haven't developed that trust bond?
If they haven't developed.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they're gonna grow. I guess they're gonna have a certain fear that they're not gonna show up with the other marshmallow or the other supplies or another thing, and then if they don't get that opportunity to use the first one, then they're never gonna be able to use it or eat it.
That's very interesting. Can you guys kind of explore like, what are some of the real world implications of this knowledge? Like, so at a societal level, like, what does this mean for people that might be like food insecure or maybe even, I don't know, steal food to fulfill their, basic needs? What does this mean for them?
Well, with food insecurity, they will usually not. I'm guessing they will not eat as much for some reason. Um, because they've grown to be more insecure about their relationship with others, I guess, and
Probably feel they wouldn't feel comfortable if they were eating with people surround them, probably fearful that they would judge them if they would eat rather a lot or rather little or rather a specific food of or if they would only eat sweets or if they would only eat vegetables or if they would only eat specific type of meat, they could probably develop a type of anxiety and fear towards the people that surround them.
and frustration with them.
Yeah, okay. So do you think it's like it's really important and essential that we reach out to people with food insecurities and kind of allow them to develop that trust bond with food pantries and other nonprofit organizations that can kind of take them in and reestablish that trust bond that maybe they've lost throughout the years of their lives?
Yeah, I think it's necessary if we reach out to them too, because we can see whatever they like, what is it that can help us make them regain that trust, and so we can inculcate it in whatsoever we are doing. And so when we reach out to them first, they might try it out, especially if they feel if they sense that they're not going to be judged, even if they don't
Hmm.
like it. So I think it's best if we reach out to them, because sometimes we just think and follow what we just know, but when others open us up to something else, we are more likely to go and to give it a try, so especially when they have someone to make them explore. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
All right. And if you're in the audience and you think of something and you want to engage in the discussion with any of the students, feel free. If you have any thoughts, go ahead and contribute as well.
Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting because I've seen this marshmallow test. Like I've seen the videos and read about it. I've never seen it connected with food insecurity. So that's really interesting to me. So originally it wasn't connected to food insecurity, right? Or was it always?
No, originally it wasn't. Originally the idea was that we need to get kids to sit patiently in their seats and pay attention to classroom instruction.
Right.
Over the years, though, and these kids, it came to be known as the marshmallow test. It wasn't actually the marshmallow test, right? It they were testing kids
Patience.
on their preferred food, right?
Hmm.
So they'd present them a food or a candy item that the kid would select, and they'd say you'd get double of this if you wait so
Right.
many minutes, and we'll bring you another one. But some people started to ask questions like, why do people in certain areas of the world, why don't they wait?
Hmm.
And so then they started asking questions about trust, which is what our students just kind of exposed us to. They would bring in some degraded object that you really can't work with, like crayons that are limited in range of colors, and so there really wasn't much to work with. And then they'd show them like this picture of this art supplies that was had much more range and you could do more with, and they'd say, you know what, if you wait a few minutes, I'm going to go get that, and if you wait and not use these, I'll bring those and you can have them. And so the kids would wait, and then they'd come back and say, okay, well, here you go, here's the art supplies to some of them, and then the other ones would say, oh, I made a mistake, we actually don't have that art supplies. And so what they learned that I can't really trust this person,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And so when this person tells me that I'm going to get my twice as much of my favorite food or candy, yeah, I'm not going to believe that. I'm just going to go ahead and eat it
Right.
now.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
s- right. And so it's kind of developed over the years, and so there's a lot of work done with the marshmallow test and some variations of it. So students, do you guys have anything else you want to add? I've got some more questions here. Are you guys ready?
Well, to add it to that, we would also like to mention that um, it could also have to do with your personal life, like whether your social, economic, and such. For example, if a kid it's like lives in poverty or something, or other situations, he would most likely grab the marshmallow because he in his home, maybe some days there's food in the pantry and there's some days there isn't. So they would
Right.
most likely act faster than the others because of their social economy and their more personal experiences.
That's a great point. And who was that talking just now?
Melody?
Melody. Because you touched on a question I had. That very question was in this marshmallow test experiment or whatever it was in the very beginning. Was there some kind of control done in the selection of test subjects to know what their socioeconomic background or family background might be? Because they come with these um, tendencies or inclinations already, right? Shaped by their social experience prior to the experiment. That seems like it would drive the outcome in ways difficult to predict unless they knew more about the background.
Yes. But on the video that we watched, it seemed that both kids were pretty much middle class and were pretty much the same on financially stable.
Uh-huh.
Do you guys remember the information about the KIP program, where the teacher
No.
did some work and they would snap to reward each other? And
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you guys want to describe that to us briefly?
Well, the teacher who taught the class, there was a class room full of students, about like 30 to 40, and many of them, basically everyone in that class was had like low finance. They were basically poverty stricken. They didn't come from like upper class or middle class. They and many of them actually suffered from like they didn't have self confidence in them, and the teacher basically throughout the year reward them she would reward them with stuff, and at the end of the year they could be able to control their emotions, because many of them felt frustrated coming into class because of the high stress that they experienced like back at home.
Mm.
So like throughout the year, by the end of the year, the kids like learned self control and emotions and stuff, and how to like
and also distract themselves, a way to distract themselves from going and finding like like for example, since those were kids who were more easily to get the marshmallow eat it immediately, they would find rather other options to try and prevent that. Rather, they would say that it was poisoned or that it was dirty or something that would block them and to not eat it.
Yeah, and this basically taught them self control throughout the school year.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting with the KIP program. They take low SES students, like Ikra and Melanie described, and they would provide them with these if-then implementation plans, which is essentially, if this thing in my world happens, my plan is to do this. And then if I'm successful in initiating that plan, I need to reward myself for it. So it's basically establishing and identifying their own marshmallow test. So the marshmallow test isn't just about the structured, controlled environment, right? It's about the real world environment. So if you're going and navigating your real world and you have something in your world that you know can take you off your path that you really want, um, and you know it's there, and do you take it or do you forego it to maybe achieve some other goal, such as saving money? So do I rush into the store and buy something when I know it will deplete my bank account? Or do I navigate away from that? And one of the ways to do that is with distractions. So the teacher, for example, gave a personal example of how the teacher liked to shop. and what they would imagine, or what the teacher would imagine, was that there was bed bugs in the store. And so that would be enough to kind of repel that teacher away. Some of the other students would use distraction techniques, so they start working on something productive when there was something, like their best friend or something was inviting them to do something, and they knew that they needed to do work. They would kind of distract themselves in their work. So there was some very interesting strategies. And what's really nice about those if-then implementation plans is those strategies are very personal to you. Okay, so what works for you might not work for somebody else. And what distracts you, or maybe stimulates some of those hot emotions, some of those go motivations, may not be the same for somebody else. So one kid might like a marshmallow, another kid might like a candy bar, another kid might like a healthy vegetable.
Broccoli.
Yeah, broccoli's pretty good as long as it's cooked properly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very personal. That's I understand that aspect of it. That's neat. Yeah.
So, students, Ikra, Melanie, Peace, do you guys have anything you want to add to that? What are some of your if-then implementation plans?
Okay. So for me, my implementation plan would be, so when I see what the result is gonna yield, that alone motivates me. I will compare, okay, what is gonna result from this instant whatever I'm into, and what is going to be the result of the future. So comparing it and seeing the greater benefit, I'm instantly motivated to just overlook it. For example, let me link it up to my academic. So if I have a test and I see an interesting movie my friends are watching, so like it's very interesting to go and watch it, so I would just like ignore it because I know that if I use this time and study more, I'm gonna get higher grades. So it's just instantly gonna motivate me to study.
Mhm.
Ikra, Melanie, do you want to add to that?
Um, Not that I know of, not me. I mean, Melanie.
I mean, I guess I was pretty much put in that situation a lot through my high school years because I don't think a lot of people know this, but I was a student body president my senior year, and there, with my being president, there comes a lot of huge responsibilities that I have to step up and do, and one of them was doing the announcements, like the pledges in the morning, and the and what they were gonna do through that day, like um, what clubs were gonna be meeting. I was supposed to inform the whole school and stuff, but that would always take place on my second period class, and I guess I was always kind of conflicted whether or not would I want to go take on my responsibilities as president, or would I rather go to class. I guess I was always pretty conflicted, but I guess with myself, I guess I understood that um, I could go to tutoring after school or before school, and then help do my best on trying to inform this whole school, because that way I will be helping, not just like not thinking about myself, but helping more people, and like letting them know so they can be more school actively, and I guess be more excited about school. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, guys. One more question, and then we'll just open it up to a broad discussion. We should be getting close to some other students joining us to discuss a little bit about the food drive that's going to occur later in the semester. But I do want to bring it back to Mosaic Family Services. So Mosaic Family Services sent out Brittany Mumford, who is one of their clinical psychologists at Mosaic Family Services and does some work with their clients and the people that they serve. And Brittany made us aware of some of the struggles that Mosaic Family Services has when trying to serve the people that they're charged with helping. Now, some of those needs that those people have were basic needs, like foods and basic hygiene products. And then they also had psychological needs, some higher level psychological needs that were very much connected to food. And so what I want to ask our students, and then I want to open this up to a general discussion, is how does Mosaic Family Services assist people with food insecurity, basic needs, and their psychological development? And what ideas do you have for maybe Mosaic Family Services to help them and assist them in their efforts? And I'll turn it over to you guys, Ikra, Melanie, and Peace.
Well, one of the so when Brittany came over to our class to discuss with us, one of the things that she mentioned is that many of her clients, they're very they have a very diverse population over there, and many of their clients are Hispanic or Asian. They asked for their cultural their culturally appropriate food, and most of the time they don't have it because of the storage limitations or like the funds that they have. They can't provide any of that, and sometimes they even have to take it out of their own pocket to feed them. So that's one of the things that I saw that was sort of concerning about that. And yeah.
Peace and Melanie, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, to add up on to that, I guess it was really also important that she said that a lot of the food that they receive, that her clients receive, they don't really use all of it, and a lot of it also goes into waste. Because the people who donate don't really know what
Group of
what
people
group
they're
of
feeding.
people they're feeding, or what group of people they're helping. So it's and also because I guess they don't really have, there's not really a lot of sources out there that can inform you of what specific like, for example, like she came to our class and let us know like her situation. There's not for other people, there's not really that source where they can go and listen or see or inform themselves of like what type of food could they get.
Sounds kind of frustrating for the people that are served by Mosaic Family Services. What were some of the food items that are typically provided to people served by Mosaic Family Services? And
A lot of canned food. It's typically served.
Yeah, and fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables are served.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what the I'm sorry, I should let you finish that answer. I'm sorry. I'm wondering what the people are. So the people are saying, the clients are saying that food's going to waste at Family Mosaic because not enough people are coming in, or the clients aren't getting the food that they need.
Like the clients aren't getting the food that they need.
So what kinds of, do you know what kinds of foods they are wanting that isn't available?
Yeah, because they're from different cultures, so they're used to their own type of food. So that's
I
why,
see.
yeah. And also they're trying to like help the test managers to try and make it to test something like what they're used to, but sometimes it doesn't work. So that's why most times the food is wasted.
I see. That makes sense. Okay. I never thought about that. That's interesting.
So, are you guys essentially saying that the food that we're providing to people from different parts of the world that are served by Mosaic Family Services, um, essentially that food doesn't look like food to them?
Yes, because I suppose that the way it works is like you live in another part of the world, and then you view the typical plates that they serve there, typical food, and then you come over here and you see it's probably the exact food but in cans, but it won't seem appetizing because, well, it's in a metal. Who would want, and like probably where you're from they serve it warm and in a plate, and then over here it's probably you have to heat it up because it's cold in a can, and wouldn't seem appetizing.
Hmm.
You know, that reminds me a little bit of our discussions about the durian. Do you guys remember the durian?
Yes,
Yes.
of course.
Can you explain to the audience a little bit what is a durian and why might we not find it appetizing here, but elsewhere it is like a delicacy?
Okay. Yeah, so I tried durian. Before I tried it, the smell wasn't. It smelled very worse, very bad. The taste, the taste was way better than the smell. So I think so many people why they wouldn't like to try out durian is because of the smell. But actually, when you try it out, you might want to give it a second chance.
That's interesting. Yeah, and if it's
Yeah.
something that visually you've never seen before, that might be kind of something that keeps you from trying it.
Yeah.
I think it's a fruit, isn't it? Durian?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a fruit.
I've smelled it. Yes.
All right. So, do you guys have anything else you wanna add to the discussion? We're getting pretty close to time that we're going to start talking about the food drive. We're about 5 minutes away from being joined by our other colleagues. We do want to go ahead and mention at this time that we do plan to have a food drive at the end of the semester. We do also plan to be in some of your classrooms. We have some professors that are training students to come around and talk about the food related needs in our community. And so you might receive an invitation or a request from some students to come to your classes. We also want to get clubs involved. So in our honors class, we're going to be reaching out to many of the clubs to see if they want to participate in the food drives. So club advisors, be ready if you're listening to this. We're eager to work with you guys. And we do have some other classes that are working on some marketing for us, and we've got some social media set up. So if anybody is interested in following us on Facebook or Instagram, please feel free to email me. You can email me directly at kedens@dcccd.edu, and I'll gladly share those links to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see what we're doing and how we're trying to serve our nonprofits. Um, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and show you all this as well. The Learning Center does offer global service learning hours for attending this workshop. And this forum, you'll receive, to my understanding, it is an hour and a half of GSL. John, is that correct?
Yeah, and what we normally do is add 30 minutes to the duration of whatever event it is. So if this goes for an hour, then the added half hour would make it an hour and a half service learning credit. And what adds that time is we ask students to respond to some reflection questions about their experience in the online environment, because we're continuing to encourage students to take advantage of events like this as well as tutoring online. We have that available to students, and sometimes students are hesitant to use online services. So we need to try to help and give them some incentive to get there. So that's one way that we do it. And then we also, as part of that set of reflection questions, we ask some questions about the content of what was discussed or covered in the event itself, just so that we can make sure that the student is kind of working that over in a deeper level.
Very good. And thank you, John. And so the steps here for receiving that service learning credit for your attendance will be you must attend the event. You must have retained some of the information from the event. You'll send Tanisha Taylor an email at tanishataylor@dccd.edu. Be sure to do this within 24 hours of the actual conclusion of this event. So sometime this evening or tomorrow, you'll receive a reply email from Tanisha, and then you'll receive those questions, as John said, and then you'll need to get those questions back within a week of the event to earn your service learning credit. So what I want to do right now is I want to go ahead and open it up to any discussion from the audience. Does the audience have any questions before we invite some other students in to engage in just general discussion? And I'll actually stop recording when we get there, but we will enter into like a general discussion about and some planning of when we want to host that food drive and some of the logistics around that food drive. So does anybody else in the audience have any other comments or questions or things they might want to add to the discussion today?
Yeah, I had a comment. First of all, just to say I really appreciate this event. I think you guys have done a great job in preparing it and engaging the topic. It's been very interesting and informative. Coming back to your general theme about food insecurity and executive functions, it's interesting to me how a lot of people in the world, because their basic needs are not met, they're kind of forced to live in a condition of urgency, right? They're always thinking about that next meal or where they're going to sleep tonight. It's always really short term, and they can't afford to look farther out or into a bigger picture because of the urgency of their need. Just imagine that if your need for clean air was suddenly you were deprived of that, you would become very urgent, and that would become the most and only thing that you needed to take care of. All other things kind of disappear from view. Whereas others of the population in the world, and I think a comparatively much smaller population, are individuals who live by, I'll just call it aspiration, right? They're looking at what they want in their life. They're able to look down the road. They're able to look at a bigger picture. They're able to make plans. And when you talk about how the deprivation of basic needs affects the brain, especially at the younger age, uh, causing an individual to be perhaps unable to look farther down the road. They're just kind of stuck in that state of urgency. Now, maybe even after they're adults and they're no longer in that kind of deprived setting anymore. What do you know about that, the lasting detrimental effect of that kind of an early experience of deprivation?
And Ikra, Melanie, and Peace, I'll go ahead and let you address John's question. Um, just some food for thought. Keep in mind what occurs when kids that are low SES and are deprived of resources don't enter a KIP program.
Well, I believe it tends, well, as an aspiring teacher, on my class, we were actually discussing about poverty and all of the different titles that of schools that's and such, and that's one of the, I actually didn't know, but the United States has one. It's also one of the highest where the children are living in poverty, and I actually didn't know that. So learning that and now actually having that correlation with what we're talking in my psychology class is is pretty, I guess, it's making a little bit sense to me. But I guess it could, like, they could become tired. They could, they, they can be more, sometimes they could be more disrespectful towards the teacher. They can have more, they could be the loud kids in class, or sometimes they would be the ones who are isolated.
And sometimes they can have low attention spans, which can be detrimental in the education system.
Right.
Likely to last in higher education and pursue long-term careers.
No.
So, and John, I think your point is very very well received by the audience. I mean, it it's true in animals too. So I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion where we in psychology, we've had a very intimate connection with food and basic needs, in that many of the animals early on in the history of psychology, the rats and the pigeons, were deprived of food, um, not to the point where they were completely starving, but to the point where they were about 70 to 80% of their body weight. And so when you take an animal that's 70, 80% of its body weight and you put it in a testing type of situation, it's very motivated to do the things that it needs to do to get food, whether that's press a lever or peck a disc or turn around when certain symbols are presented to it. Um, and what you lose in those situations is you lose all the other behaviors that would occur if the animal were satiated, which I think was your point. For example, rats and pigeons and other animals like to groom themselves. They also like to spend time with other animals. They also like to explore their environment. And they quit doing those things when they don't have enough food or they feel malnourished.
Yeah, I think that has huge implications for human society, doesn't it? I mean, when individuals' basic needs are not provided, they don't have the resource to engage in kind of a higher social relationship with other people because they're always so concerned about satisfying those deep needs.
Do we have,
Students,
may I ask a question, or are we running out
oh,
of time?
no, I think we're doing okay on time. We'll give it about 3 to 5 more minutes, and then I'll go ahead and conclude, and we'll turn it over to planning processes.
Okay. I had a quick, just wanted to ask the girls if, so since there's an awareness of this kind of disconnect, there's a waste because of a disconnect between what's available at food pantries and what people are familiar with and what they want. Do you know if any of these local, and this can be addressed to you too, Kyle, do you know if any of the local nonprofits and food pantries are trying to address it, like either through education of the foods that exist or maybe trying to get foods that are desired? Do you know if there's any way to address it?
Well, they're trying to implement or try and find new ways where each person could get what they need and what they'd like. But
Mm-hmm.
again, since like there's not enough money or there's not room to freeze some stuff, it wouldn't and sometimes in cases there's not enough for everybody, or
Yeah.
there's just not for anyone. And I
Did
do know that the um they're trying to come up with ways where they could do more fundraisers or contact, restaurants. Or I remember a classmate was mentioning about how Starbucks was giving all of the food that they wouldn't use on a day, they would give it to food pantries or to organizations so they could give it to, I guess, the people that would actually eat it, because once again, not everybody eats the same
Right.
thing.
Yeah, that makes, I
So
understand.
so they were trying to find, maybe, and like another classmate was also saying that they could contact different culture, like, restaurants, and then maybe they could donate some typical foods.
Hmm.
Yeah. They also mentioned that in cities like Richardson, they have a very culturally diverse restaurants over there.
Yeah.
They can like feed them what they want sometimes, and like having community gardens and like reaching out to wealthy corporations, and like reaching out to even the Dallas Arboretum for that, and like
Hmm.
creating like a green space in their garden as well can help
Yeah.
out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
they can plant what they want in the garden.
well, thank you. Yeah, I was curious about that. That's good that they're trying to address it. I appreciate your responses.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else anybody would like to add? I want to say thank you to everybody that's joined us today in our online forum, um, in an effort to kind of promote this idea that we do have an intimate connection with food, and that food shapes our psychological experience, and we'll see that as we move through our programming throughout this semester. So every other week we'll have this programming. um, Melanie and Ikra, when did you guys schedule our next online forum?
That will take place next Friday. Next Friday, the October the 4th.
October 4th.
From again 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and
And we're gonna be discussing various topical options.
so there's gonna be a lot of variety there, different information.
All right, that sounds wonderful and exciting. So thank you, and thank you for hosting this event today. I also want to thank the Learning Center for all the support we've received from John and Tanisha to make this happen. It wouldn't be possible without you guys. I also want to thank Family Mosaic Services for coming out and really interacting with our students to give them a better idea of how the content, what we're learning in class, actually applies, and where it may not apply in the actual service industry and serving the people that need it most. And so I want to go ahead and conclude this session, and thank you all for joining us. Please, if you're here to help plan the food drive, please go ahead and stick around. Ikra, Melanie, and Peace, go ahead and stick around. And anybody else that wants to have input, you may go ahead and stick around too. But I'm going to go ahead and conclude the recording. And just one more time, thank you for everybody that joined us today and involved themselves in the discussion.